I'll never forget the sting of those words, sharp, casual, tossed out between laughter and clinking glasses like they meant nothing. My brother told his friends I was the family embarrassment. That sentence burned itself into my memory the moment I heard it. I hadn't even been supposed to hear it. I was upstairs at my parents' house, visiting for the weekend, grabbing a bottle of water before dinner when I overheard the conversation floating from the backyard. The patio door was cracked open, letting in the scent of grilled meat and cheap beer, and my brother S. voice, confident, loud, and just tipsy enough, carried through. Yeah, Emily S. always been the odd one out. You know, the artsy one who never really figured life out. We call her the family embarrassment. The guys around him laughed. A few awkward chuckles, but no one defended me. Why would they? To them, it was just banter brothers teasing each other, but to me, it was a knife. I froze. My throat tightened, and I remember gripping that water bottle so hard it crackled in my hand. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was 31 years old, running my own small but steadily growing creative agency, paying my bills, living independently, yet my brother still saw me as the black sheep. When I walked outside a few minutes later, my smile was practiced, my tone light. Hey, dinner is ready? Jason S. face flickered just for a second as if he wasn't sure how much I'd heard. Then he smirked and said, Yeah, Em. Come join the real world for a bit. The real world. His favorite phrase. Everyone laughed again, but this time I laughed too, even as something inside me quietly fractured. Jason and I had always been different. He was the golden boy, the finance major who landed a six-figure job at 24, drove a company car, and wore tailored suits to family dinners. I was the one who majored in design, freelanced through my 20s, and spent years figuring out how to make my creativity profitable. Our parents adored us both, but I could tell which one they bragged about at dinner parties. When Jason got promoted, they hosted a barbecue. When I landed my first client, Mom said, "That is nice, honey," before asking Jason for stock tips. It used to bother me. Then it used to hurt. Eventually, I told myself I didn't care. But hearing Jason call me the embarrassment shattered the illusion that I'd made peace with it. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan, replaying his words over and over. He didn't mean it, I told myself. He was drunk, just showing off. But another voice, quieter, truer, whispered, He said what he really thinks. I'd always admired Jason's confidence, even when it veered into arrogance. He had this way of making the world bend to him. People listened when he spoke, opportunities found him, and he never seemed to doubt his place in any room. I, on the other hand, had fought for every inch of self-worth I possessed. Still, part of me wanted his approval. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. The next morning, I left before breakfast. I told Mom I had an early client meeting back in the city. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, and said, "You and Jason should spend more time together, sweetie. He worries about you, you know." I almost laughed. On the drive home, the sun was bright and cruel. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I replayed the conversation for the 100th time. I kept imagining what I'd say to him if I ever brought it up. Do you even hear yourself? Why do you need to tear me down to look big? Is this how you see me, a punchline? But I knew I wouldn't say any of it. Confrontation was Jason S. arena. He'd twist it, charm it, spin it into something else, and somehow I'd end up apologizing for taking it the wrong way. So instead, I made a silent promise to myself that day. I'd let my success speak for me. Not to prove anything to Jason, not entirely, anyway, but to prove something to myself. By the end of that month, I threw myself into work like never before. I took on bigger clients, riskier pitches, stayed up late rewriting proposals until every word was perfect. My company, Lumina Creative had been slowly gaining traction in the branding world, a few small tech startups, some local restaurants, but I decided it was time to play bigger. I started reaching out to corporate clients. I invested in marketing. I networked like my life depended on it, and it worked. 6 months later, Lumina landed its first major contract, a nationwide rebranding campaign for a sustainable fashion retailer. It was the kind of job that could define a company. When I called Mom to tell her, she was thrilled. That's wonderful, honey. Jason S. in town this weekend. Why don't you come by Sunday and tell him the news? I hesitated, then said yes. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was hopeful. But a part of me wanted him to see that I wasn't some wandering failure, that the embarrassment could build something real. Sunday came, and with it, a sense of quiet determination. I wore my favorite navy blazer, the one that made me feel like I belonged at the table, not serving drinks to it. When I arrived, Jason was already there, beer in hand, laughing with Dad about some golf story. He looked perfectly at ease, as always. "Hey, Em," he said casually when he saw me. "Haven't seen you in a while. You still doing that freelance stuff?" I took a breath. "Actually, Lumina Creative just signed a national client. It's kind of a big deal." He raised his eyebrows. "Really? That's surprising. Congrats, I guess." Surprising. The word hung between us like a bad aftertaste. Dad smiled proudly. "See, Jason? Your sister S doing big things too." Jason smirked, took a sip of his drink and said, "Yeah, well, it's good she is finally finding her lane. It shouldn't have gotten under my skin. But it did." That night, after dinner, I stood by the kitchen window, watching the backyard lights glow softly against the fence. I heard the laughter drifting from the living room, Jason's laugh, Mom's softer one, Dad's deep chuckle. And for the first time, I realized something. I'd been waiting my whole life for validation from people who didn't know how to give it. Jason wasn't my rival. He was my teacher unintentionally, maybe, but still. His words had forced me to build armor, to develop grit, to carve out a version of myself that didn't need anyone else's approval. But I wasn't done learning yet, because I had no idea that within a year, I'd get the chance to introduce Jason to someone who would change everything and prove, once and for all, who the real embarrassment was. The invisible years. The months that followed were the kind that test a person's bones, not just their patience, but their belief in themselves. After that barbecue, I didn't bring up what I heard. Not once. Partly because I didn't want to give Jason the satisfaction of knowing he'd gotten to me, and partly because I wasn't sure what I'd even say. "Hey, remember when you called me the family embarrassment in front of your friends?" It would just sound petty, and I didn't want to be petty. I wanted to be better. So I did the only thing that ever gave me control. I worked. I'd already been running small digital campaigns for local businesses, flower shops, yoga studios, neighborhood cafes that couldn't afford big agency rates. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. And while Jason was getting his first big promotion at a financial firm downtown, I was up at 2 in the morning, trying to figure out how to make a client's website load 0.3 seconds faster so Google wouldn't bury them. That's the kind of thing people don't see the grind behind a dream. They only notice when the lights finally turn on. But in those invisible years, I learned everything. I learned how to write ad copy that made strangers cry. I learned how to stretch 200 into a full campaign. I learned how to smile on days when a client refused to pay on time and my rent was due. And I learned what silence felt like, not peaceful silence, but the kind that comes when the people you love the most stop believing in you. Mom tried to help, in her way. "Sweetheart, maybe you should get something more stable," she'd say over the phone. "Jason just bought a new condo, and he says the benefits at his company are amazing." I'd force a laugh. "That's great for him, Mom." "Really? But I am." Okay. Of course you are, she'd say quickly the way people do when they don't believe it but want to sound supportive. After hanging up, I'd stare at my ceiling for a long time, wondering if I was lying to myself too. Because some nights, I wasn't okay. I was scared, terrified that I'd risked everything and would end up exactly where Jason said I belonged. A disappointment no one could quite explain. But something inside me refused to quit. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the small, fierce part of me that still remembered the girl who'd once been the smart one in the family, before Jason's achievements started taking up all the air. So, I kept building one email, one client, one sleepless night at a time. 2 years in, I hit my first real break. A small boutique skincare line called Arlo Cosmetics hired me to handle their online relaunch. I threw everything I had into that campaign. We built an identity that was real, not flashy, but full of heart. The results were better than I could be dreamed. Within a month, their sales doubled. Within 3, they were featured in a lifestyle magazine. And with that one success, something shifted. Suddenly, people wanted me. I wasn't begging clients to take a chance anymore. They were asking if I had room in my schedule. I brought on a designer, then a copywriter. We called ourselves Lumina Creative, and for the first time, I had a team. We didn't have fancy offices or matching coffee mugs. We worked out of my apartment, a space that always smelled like burnt toast and determination. But we were building something real. And every late night, every deadline, every sorry, can I make it to the family dinner was worth it. Of course, my family didn't really get it. Dad would ask, "So, when are you going to open a proper office?" As if that was the mark of success. Mom still compared me to Jason without realizing it. And Jason? Well, Jason barely spoke to me. He'd comment nice work, sis on a few LinkedIn posts, but it always read like an afterthought. He never asked how I was doing. But that was fine. I didn't need him anymore. Then one evening, while going through invoices, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, is this Emily?" A woman asked. "Yes, it is," I said cautiously. "This is Meredith from Hanley Tech. One of our team members recommended you. We're looking for a new agency to handle our branding for an upcoming product launch." I nearly dropped my pen. Hanley Tech, a mid-sized but rapidly growing tech company, was way beyond our usual clientele. We scheduled a meeting. I prepped all night. The next morning, I walked into their glass-walled office with my laptop, my portfolio, and shaking hands. But when Meredith looked at my proposal, she smiled. This is exactly the kind of energy we've been missing. We landed the deal. It was our biggest project yet, and the start of everything that followed. That night, as I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and my laptop glowing in front of me, I realized something profound. Jason S. Word's family embarrassment had once felt like a curse, but now I saw them differently. They were fuel. Every dismissive comment, every condescending smirk, every awkward silence at family dinners ID turned it all into momentum. He had unknowingly pushed me into becoming exactly the person he said I couldn't be, and I couldn't wait for the day he found out. The reunion and the CEO. By the time our company, Lumina Creative, hit its 3rd anniversary, life had changed in ways that would have been unrecognizable to my younger self. We had an actual office now, a bright, open space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown. The day we moved in, I cried in the middle of the empty floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes and the smell of fresh paint. I wasn't supposed to be here, not according to the version of me everyone in my family had quietly written off. Our biggest client, Hanley Tech, had not only renewed their contract but had introduced us to other partner startups, wellness brands, even a charity foundation that wanted a full rebranding. I had gone from begging for invoices to clear to choosing which projects we could afford to say no to. But success didn't change the way my family saw me. Not at first. The moment that tested it all came with a simple text from Mom one Friday afternoon. Family dinner this Sunday. Jason S. bringing his boss. Don't be late, sweetheart. Wear something nice. I nearly laughed. Wear something nice, as if that would fix the years of quiet tension between us. But curiosity won. I hadn't seen Jason properly in months, not since Christmas. And even then, we'd only exchanged polite words about traffic and weather. Part of me wondered if he'd changed, if maybe time had humbled him a little. Spoiler, it hadn't. Sunday came, and I drove out to our parents' house, the same brick home we'd grown up in, the same uneven driveway, the same flower bed Mom always swore she'd redo next spring. The moment I stepped in, I smelled roast chicken and heard laughter from the living room. Jason was standing there, dressed sharply in a navy suit, holding a glass of wine and talking to a tall man in a gray blazer. Mom was beaming. Dad looked proud. And I suddenly felt 16 again, the quiet one at the edge of someone else's spotlight. When Jason saw me, his expression flickered. Not surprise exactly, more like mild inconvenience. "Hey, Em," he said with a tight smile. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, keeping my tone even. He turned to the man beside him. "This is Robert Hanley, my boss." "Robert, this is my sister Emily." I froze. Hanley. The name hit me like a shockwave, not because I didn't recognize it, but because I knew it too well. Robert Hanley, founder and CEO of Hanley Tech, the same Hanley Tech that had become Lumina's biggest and most loyal client, the same man ID had weekly meetings with for over a year. I extended my hand, trying to mask my surprise. "It is nice to meet you, Mr. Hanley." But Robert's face broke into a wide grin. "Emily, I didn't realize you were Jason's sister." Jason blinked. "Wait, you two know each other?" Robert chuckled. "Know each other? Emily's team at Lumina runs our entire brand division. She's one of the most brilliant partners we've ever worked with. You could be heard a pin drop." Dad's glass froze midair. Mom's smile wavered. And Jason's face. Oh, that face fell into an expression I'll never forget. The same kind of expression he used to give me when I told him my dreams, like he was about to laugh but wasn't sure if it was safe yet. Except now, he was the one speechless. Dinner was interesting. Robert sat beside me, enthusiastically recounting how our last campaign had boosted Hanley Tech's numbers by 200. "You should have seen the boardroom that day, Emily. They were floored." Mom and Dad exchanged looks that were half proud, half stunned. Jason, on the other hand, kept forcing smiles, his knuckles tight around his fork. At one point, Mom tried to lighten the tension. "Well, it is nice to see you two connected through work." "What a small world." Robert laughed. "Oh, it is more than that. I've been telling Jason for months he reminds me of our partner as brother you. I can't believe I never made the connection." Jason's eyes darted toward me, burning with something that wasn't quite anger, but close, maybe humiliation, maybe realization. He'd spent years building an identity on being the successful sibling, and suddenly, in his boss's eyes, he wasn't the star anymore. When dinner ended, everyone drifted toward the porch with coffee, and Robert pulled me aside. "Emily, I am serious. The board's talking about offering Lumina a long-term partnership. We'll go over details soon, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." My throat tightened. "Thank you, Robert. That means more than you know." He smiled warmly. "You earned it. Don't ever doubt that." As he walked back to join the others, I turned and found Jason watching me from the doorway. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "Guess you've been doing pretty well." "Guess so," I said softly. He looked away, jaw tight. "You could be told me you worked with him." I tilted my head. "You could be told me you used to call me the family embarrassment." His face flushed. "You heard that?" "Every word." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean, Yeah, you did, I said gently. And that's okay. I used to need your approval. Not anymore. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The night hummed around us crickets, clinking glasses, quiet laughter from the porch. Finally, he nodded, eyes down. You really built all that yourself? Every piece, I said. He looked like he wanted to say more, but Robert called out his name, and he turned away. As he walked off, I felt something shift. Not revenge, not triumph, something deeper. Freedom. For the first time in years, I didn't need him to understand my worth. I already did. The turning point. A month after that dinner, life carried on, but not without echoes. Every now and then, Mom would call and mention Jason in that careful tone, the one she used when she didn't want to take sides. He's been a little quieter lately, she'd say. I think seeing you and Robert together made him reflective. Reflective was generous. From what I heard later, things at Jason's firm weren't going well. Apparently, there'd been internal restructuring, and several senior managers were being rotated out. Jason had assumed he was safe after all. He was tight with Robert Hanley. But corporate loyalty is a fickle thing, and when the dust settled, Jason found himself offered a chance to pursue other opportunities. In plain English, he was let go. When Mom told me, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to say it was karma. Another part, the bigger part, just felt sad. Because despite everything, he was still my brother. 2 weeks later, I ran into him by accident. I was at a coffee shop near our office, picking up a cappuccino before a meeting, when I heard a voice behind me. Em? I turned, and there he was. Jason looked different, not bad, but smaller somehow. His hair was longer, his shirt untucked, eyes tired. Hey, I said carefully. Didn't expect to see you here? He gave a sheepish smile. Yeah, I've been working out of home lately. Or, well, trying to. I nodded. I heard about Hanley Tech. He sighed. Yeah, it was rough. One day, I was planning next quarter's targets. The next, they were telling me my department is being restructured. He made air quotes, but his laugh didn't land. There was a pause. Then he looked up at me. You're doing really well, huh? I hesitated. It has been good. Busy, but good. He nodded again, eyes on the floor. You know, I used to tell myself you just got lucky, that it was a phase, that you'd grow out of the whole freelance dreamer thing, but you actually built something. I didn't say anything. He continued, voice lower. And when I called you that name, at the barbecue, it wasn't about you. It was about me. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? He looked out the window as if searching for the right words. You were doing your own thing, living on your terms, while I was killing myself trying to impress people who'd forget my name in a week. And when you started succeeding, it scared me, because it made me realize I'd built my life around being the successful one. And if I wasn't at that, then who was I? I watched him, unsure what to say. For years, I'd waited for him to admit something like that. And now that he had, it didn't feel like victory. It felt human. I was cruel because I was insecure, he said quietly. And I am sorry, Em. You didn't deserve that. The apology hung between us like a fragile glass reel, but delicate. I took a deep breath. Thank you, I said finally. That means a lot. We stood there in awkward silence until my name was called for the coffee. I picked up the cup and turned back to him. Jason, for what it's worth. You'll figure it out. You always do. He smiled faintly. Yeah, I hope so. In the months that followed, something strange happened. We started talking again. Not often, but enough. Sometimes he'd text to ask for advice on freelancing or business contracts. Other times, I'd forward him job leads or articles about leadership. It wasn't a perfect relationship, maybe it never would be, but it was real. Slowly, the walls came down. Then, one day, out of nowhere, he called me, sounding almost excited. Are you free for lunch tomorrow? Sure, I said. Why? I just want to show you something. We met at a small diner near the park. He looked better, healthier, lighter. There was a spark I hadn't seen in a long time. He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. I've been working on this, he said. It's a consulting service helping small businesses with financial planning. Nothing huge yet, but I've got a couple of clients. I scrolled through his deck. It was simple, clear, well thought out. This is good, I said, genuinely impressed. He smiled. I know it's not a corporate job, but it feels honest, like something I actually care about. And for the first time, I saw the version of Jason that had been buried under years of competition, the kid who used to build tree houses with me, who once stayed up helping me with my science project even though he had football practice the next day. He wasn't the golden boy or the family embarrassment anymore. He was just my brother. As I drove home that afternoon, I realized how much had changed. The revenge I'd once fantasized about making him see my worth, proving him wrong, had turned into something much softer, something truer. Life had already given me justice, not through humiliation, but through growth. I didn't need to tear him down to rise. Sometimes the best revenge is peace, and I'd finally found mine. Full circle. A year later, the story came full circle in a way I never could be scripted, not even in my most ambitious daydreams. It was a bright spring morning, the kind that smells like new beginnings. Lumina Creative had just signed our biggest contract yet, a long-term global branding partnership with a tech conglomerate that would double our revenue overnight. The team was buzzing. The office smelled of celebration coffee and printer ink, and for the first time I allowed myself to breathe. We made it. But the milestone wasn't what made that day unforgettable. It was who came to visit. Mom called around noon. Sweetheart, your father and I are coming by later. We have something to drop off. Sure, I said, assuming it was cookies or another plant for my desk. When they arrived, they weren't alone. Jason walked in behind them, holding a slim portfolio and a quiet, nervous smile. Hey, he said. Do you have a minute? I blinked, surprised. Yeah, of course. Mom and Dad exchanged those conspiratorial looks that parents share when they read trying to stay out of their grown children's business, but can to resist watching from the sidelines. Then they disappeared into the break room, conveniently getting coffee. Jason stepped closer and set his portfolio on my desk. I wanted to show you something. I opened it. Inside was a proposal, clean, polished, professional. Hanley Financial Wellness, powered by Lumina Creative. I looked up at him. He rubbed the back of his neck. I've been working with a few small firms, helping them restructure debt and build sustainable financial plans. Robert Hanley saw what I was doing and asked if I'd pitch something for their employee wellness program. I told him I couldn't do it alone. So I thought of you. For a moment, I just stared at him, speechless. You want to partner? I asked. He nodded. If you will have me. The part of me that once craved payback could be laughed. Could be reminded him of that barbecue, of those words, the family embarrassment. But the person I'd become had outgrown that version of revenge. I smiled. Let us do it. Working with Jason again was surreal, not because of our history, but because of how naturally it all clicked this time. He wasn't the same person I'd known before. He asked questions, listened, took advice. He treated my team with respect, and even stayed late helping them understand the finance side of things. He was humble in a way that felt real, earned. And I'll admit, it felt good to watch him rediscover himself, not through someone else's approval, but through purpose. When the Hanley Financial Wellness Project launched, it became a case study in corporate empathy, teaching companies how to help employees manage financial stress. It went viral on LinkedIn, picked up by two industry journals, and was even recognized by a small business association. During the award dinner, when they called our names, Jason turned to me and whispered, "You were still the better speaker." I laughed. "You were still the louder one." He grinned, that old brotherly mischief flashing for the first time in years. And as we walked up to the stage together, I realized something profound. This wasn't tea about who was more successful anymore. It was about healing. Afterward, when the applause faded and the lights dimmed, he pulled me aside. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think strength meant always being on top the job, the car, the title. But watching you, it's different. You built something from the ground up, not to prove anything, but because you believed in it. That's real strength." I smiled, feeling the truth of his words settle somewhere deep in my chest. "You learned too, Jason. You rebuilt yourself. That takes guts." He looked down, then back at me. "Thanks for not giving up on me." I shook my head. "You didn't make it easy." He chuckled. "I know." We stood there in comfortable silence, the kind we hadn't shared since childhood. It felt like the noise between us, the competition, resentment, misunderstanding had finally quieted. Months later, at another family gathering, things felt lighter. Dad was bragging to relatives about both his kids, for once telling anyone who to listen about Lumina's latest project and Jason's growing consultancy. Mom was smiling, that radiant, relieved smile she hadn't worn in years. At one point, I caught Jason talking to a group of family friends. He was laughing, gesturing with his hands, and I heard him say, "My sister's company made that happen. She's the brains behind all of it." It took everything in me not to tear up, because that right there was the real full circle. Not revenge, not payback, recognition, respect, reconciliation. That night, as the party wound down, I stood outside under the porch light, looking up at the stars. It struck me how different everything looked from here, from a place of peace. Once upon a time, my brother's words had crushed me. They'd lit a fire in me that burned through years of insecurity and doubt. But that same fire had forged me into someone I never would become otherwise. And now, instead of bitterness, I felt gratitude. Because maybe that's what life does. It takes the broken things and turns them into blueprints for strength. When Jason joined me outside, we didn't talk much. We didn't have to. He just nudged my arm and said quietly, "Guess you were not the family embarrassment after all." I laughed. "Guess not." And for the first time, he laughed too, not out of pride or mockery, but out of understanding. Word count, 3,700 themes lessons. True success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. Family can break you, but it can also be the reason you rise. And sometimes, the sweetest justice is simply becoming who they said you couldn't be.